Where can you find me? You can find me in the corner of working on myself, drive, and and helping others out on their motivation lane.
My
So,
boy.
but
My
happy election day,
guy.
America! Happy election day. This is one of the best shows that I like having at God Radio and like being here. And this is a special show that's going to be enlightening today, which is election day. So
Come on.
hold on to your seat, man. We're gonna give you
Come
a
on.
ride.
Come on.
And next we have Mr. Mike, the money guy. Dunn.
What up, though? What up, though? What up, though? What's going on, guys? It's Mike, the money guy, CEO, Decade Financial Solutions, CEO, Decade Consulting Group, CEO, Decade. A lot of Decade going on. We're going to make it an incorporation one of these days. But always good to be in the building with my fellows on a Tuesday, man. It feels good to be back. Dr. T, thanks for having us. As always, holding down the fort during COVID.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, come on now.
And don't adjust your computers, phones, TV screens. If you're watching this, that is Mike really buffed up. he got COVID buff on this election.
That's the COVID workout.
COVID workout.
Oh, my God.
The pandemic workout.
Pandemic workout.
Hey,
Pandemic workout.
hey,
man.
hey, tell me y'all wasn't eating the COVID donuts, because I know I was. I know I was.
I still am.
I was knocking them back for a
I
little
am.
bit there.
I
so.
know I'm on Mike's team after if the apocalypse comes.
Yeah, the apocalypse.
I can't pronounce
He's
my
right
words
here.
today.
They don't have that word in Trinidad.
Apocalypse comes. I'm on his team.
Oh, man.
So tonight, gentlemen, is really, really special. And
Yeah.
Mike, we know you have your group watching in live
Yeah.
with you. And if you're watching live on GOD Radio 1 on our show, if you have any questions or comments, please add them, because we really want to talk about this election, what it means to you and what it means to us. So we're just going to go ahead and talk about it. That's what we do.
Okay.
Let's talk about it. So, Mike, Clinton, tell me what are you guys' thoughts on this year's election?
I'll let Mike start, man.
All right, yeah, right. You know what, man? Like, honestly, this has been a very unique experience. You know, we've been saying it all year long. We talk about this whole concept of vision, right? And who would have thought that it would have came through all of these like roads of adversity? And you know, the jury's still out about how I really, truly, 100% feel about the election season this year. It takes a lot for me to say that, because normally I always try to find myself trying to either be on one side or the other. But I find myself just really just kind of processing still, you know. There's a lot that's happened as a society. There's a lot that's happened to us as Americans.
Right.
There's a lot that's happened to us internationally, you know, globally, you know, right? And it's all centered around America, because I believe that America is the greatest country in the world, amen. So, so it's really hard for me to give you like a real definitive answer of like, this is exactly how I feel, or this is my exact thoughts about the election season.
Right.
You know, I'm definitely excited for what the outcome might be, whether we have Trump for another 4 years or whether we introduce a new president after this is all said and done.
Right.
I do feel optimistic, though. That is one thing I do feel is hope for the future, and I think that this has really stirred up a lot of crazy conversation, right?
Right.
You know, kind of the heart of what Let's Talk About It is all about. It's like talking about these kind of things, and I think through that dialogue, some of us have gotten more close together. Maybe some of us have gotten a little further apart. But one thing that we can't deny is that we're all feeling something. You know,
Right.
we're all tuned in, right? Everyone's paying attention now.
Right.
So,
Clinton, what are your thoughts, man?
Yeah, I mean, this has been an interesting year. In fact, I mean, interesting 4 years. You know, since
Yeah.
2016. You know, and it's like one after the other, back to back to back to back. And I know people are there's a lot of anxiety right now, especially coming down to the election, because you can feel it in the air. It's like you can cut the tension with a knife.
yeah,
You
right.
know? And if you look at the news, if you look on TV, everywhere you turn on TV is either COVID-19 or the election.
Yeah,
And everybody, I won't say just America, everybody around the world is kind of tuned in.
I think
You know,
so.
It's engaged a lot of people around the world, because everybody thinks that the outcome is going to determine where we go from here. Because now it's kind of like we're dealing with a pandemic, and then on top of that, we're dealing with not just in America having to have another phase of the pandemic coming, but we also have a global mobilization of people trying to actually get over this, which is, and then we have an economic crisis that might happen. So, I mean, these are the things that that I think people are more worried about right now because they think that they're kind of hoping that this election solves a lot of these problems.
Yeah.
You know, and I say it's kind of like God is still in control. You know,
Come on.
If
Come on, somebody.
I've never looked at a president as being my savior. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I've never looked at a leader being my savior to anything. So, I mean, for me, leaders come and leaders go. They'll be used by God either way.
Come on.
You know? So,
Come on.
But at the same time, I can't take away from the reality of saying, okay, let's pray about it. No, there's some real issues that is happening right now that we need to deal with. You know, there's a lot of division, which concerns me. You know, there's a lot of division, which I think we need to kind of come together and solve, you know, apart from whatever the rhetoric is out there from our leaders. We just need to understand that we need to solve that. And I think we're going to need God more than ever moving forward, you know?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because when we talk about how this country is going to be led, I think the number one thing we need to focus on is, regardless of who's president, is we need to pray for our leaders.
Right.
Because although individually we live our lives and whoever's president probably shouldn't change how we live that much, depending on who the president is could depend on how our relationship is when it comes to international affairs and how we might approach military opportunities or when it comes to war and things of that nature,
right.
which can really affect our lives right there.
Right.
So I think to stay prayed up on regardless of who the president is, is to say, you know what, God, we know that you're in control. We believe that, you know, whoever's going to be president, all those chosen by the public of America, we believe that no matter what happens, that your sovereignty will reign supreme no matter what.
Right.
So I love that.
I'm glad you said that. Let's pray about it because I think that's something, you know, we don't think about it that much.
Yeah.
Right? You know, we don't think about, oh, my guy didn't win.
Right.
Or the person I voted for didn't win. And I'm just going to sit there and bash and hate them instead of saying, you know what, I want this person to lead and be successful because if they're successful, it benefits everybody.
Right.
Yeah, you know, I think that's really interesting, dude, because like I find myself in my quiet time, not only just praying for the leadership of our country, but for my neighbors.
Right.
You know, like, I mean, maybe like going back in the day, like when we were kids and we used to connect with our neighbors all the time, you know, like I don't remember being this connected to my neighbors and having like so much dialogue like with my neighbors on a regular basis about things that are going on because of the fact that everybody's like at home, you know,
Right.
like not a lot of people were really having to physically go to work, you know, and so I would see more people in my complex than I had noticed before and struck up a lot of conversations with a lot of people about a lot of different things over the time that we've been kind of cooped up, you
Right.
know, and you guys are 100% spot on. Like there's a lot of fear, you know, in what's happening. There's a lot of faith in what's happening too. And like that to me has been kind of the biggest polarizing thing is I see a lot of fearful responses and then I see a lot of faithful responses. I was listening to a guy talking about, you know, that was up in Washington. I you got to forgive me. I did not know that Washington had like all of these crazy riots and stuff that was going on. Like I was just completely,
You're talking about the BLM?
just a whole bunch of stuff
Yeah.
that was going on up there that I really honestly didn't have a clue. Like I knew Portland was a hot zone, but I didn't know how much of that was going on in Washington. And it was on the daily podcast. They were talking
Right.
about, he was talking about purchasing his first AR-15, you know,
Right.
that's not a little boy gun, you know, like,
Yeah.
and he was
That's
talking
an
about,
assault rifle.
oh, that's an assault rifle,
Right.
right? And they call it America's weapon actually. And you know, he was just talking about like the fear. I could hear the fear, you know, like in his voice. And I think about that exacerbated, magnified over like millions and millions of Americans because a lot of Americans feel the way that he does right now,
Right.
you know?
Right, and I think it's all about listening to the right messages. You know, there's so many messages that are going out there, and then people are just one of the things I always say. America is one of the most we will have the most freedom. Our country's built off of being free,
Yeah.
and having that freedom. But what we don't realize is that freedom comes at a price too. We might think it's free, and we are free to do as what we please, but at the same time, look at how we are stacked up against when it comes to controlling a pandemic.
Yeah.
Because everybody now is enforced saying, okay, well, I want this right. This is my right to not wear a mask or not be here, not to be in a gathering. So even though there's a pandemic going on and an airborne virus, so one of the things that I always try to make people understand is that you have to look. You can't depend that the laws were made, but at the same time, a lot of these laws are, I would say, a little bit, how to put it, old.
Yeah.
I always lean to the fact that the law that governs me is the Bible. And when I read the Bible, it says, love my neighbor as myself.
There you go.
And if I care for my neighbor, I'm not going to try to inflict anything that hurts them.
The two greatest commandments, if you follow those,
right,
you'll be all right.
Right. And that's more freedom than anything else. But at the same time, too, there's so much information that people just mistake and misconstrue and mix it up and make it sound like it's one-sided, or when it's kind of like we all want the same thing.
Yeah. I think people
we all want the same thing.
I think people are just looking for information to support their narrative.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, like with the way that the internet works, you can find it. You can find it.
And that's the freedom.
And it's like, and we've gotten past the point of what I like to call looking at what's objectionable.
Right.
It was interesting. So I went on a you guys know I went on a bachelor party trip for like 5 days with some very, very
5-day bachelor trip.
Oh yeah, it was lit, bro. It was lit. Not God radio.
And by the way, if y'all don't know, Mike,
definitely not
Mike
God radio.
is going off the market. If y'all don't know.
Yeah.
He got the holy oil and cleaned.
Oh no! I mean, I was right, dude. I was in God's country. I jumped. I did a couple baptisms to make sure I didn't come back with anything. And
a prayer breakfast.
I said, hey, what happens at the bachelor party stays in the bachelor party. I was around some very, very highly intelligent men, that I went on the bachelor party with, and they talked a lot about politics, and I found myself just really not wanting to engage, because in my mind I was just thinking like, what's really the point? We're sitting here and we're going to debate over our opinions and all of that, right? And at the end of the day, like I'm kind of leaning on what you guys are talking about, which is like, I serve a far greater authority than anyone who's in office, and I just, and I just didn't see. For the first time, and even one of my buddies was like, "Man, I'm surprised you haven't like jumped in and started like doing your, your debate thing that you do." And I was just like, I don't know. I think I'm just looking at the world a little different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the media, we're so media based and focused, especially when it comes to politics, because you see it on your social media, you see it on the TV, you see it in the newspaper. Sometimes you could get information overload.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes you can see what someone does, and it's so bad, but the next day it's like it doesn't stick because new information is coming in on something else. And I think that's a lot of times what we're dealing with. This information is we're getting so much information that we don't have time to really process what we just learned.
Yeah, everything is just consume.
Exactly.
Yeah, I told you guys I unplugged from social media. I've been unplugged now for probably the last like 7 or 8 days.
That's awesome.
Other than like doing this live feed,
That's awesome.
But let me ask you guys this though. So in addition to not really want to get involved in those conversations, it is still very important that you go out and exercise your right to vote.
Yeah,
exactly.
So tell me your guys' thoughts about people who may say, well, my vote doesn't matter. Whoever's going to win is going to win anyway. You have the electoral vote that's going to choose.
The electoral college, right?
Electoral college.
Yeah.
That's going to
Okay,
choose.
so let's talk. I mean, I think we're running on the same wavelength because I was already thinking about it in my mind, like if we were going to talk about the EC.
Right.
I mean, dude, the EC in its nature is really fundamentally flawed. Like
Right.
Let's just call a spade a spade. Let's talk facts, right? Donald Trump, in the years 2016, lost the people's vote by
Right.
over 3 million votes.
Right.
Right.
So that's not a small number. We're not talking tens of thousands here. We're talking
Right.
3 million people.
Yeah.
And he ended up becoming the president.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Because of the fact that we have an electoral college, right?
Right.
Now, here's the other thing that I don't like about the electoral college is that when you consider the fact that what do we always hear about in every political campaign race? The swing states,
Right.
Right. What was this like? Even here, what was the first maybe half an hour? What was it centered on? Florida.
Yeah.
Right.
And then they talked about Michigan, and then we talked about
Colorado.
Pennsylvania, right,
Yeah.
and Colorado. Now, what is the topic of contention in Pennsylvania? Fracking, right? But let's look at the grand scheme of things.
Right.
How important really is fracking to the overall longevity of the entire system of the United States, like all the Americans? That's affecting one specific population, and I'm not trying to minimize them. I'm just trying to give perspective, right?
Right.
So we are now talking about what is really a regional issue on a national level because strategically it makes sense for presidents who are trying to win swing state votes because of the electoral college to be talking about those issues.
Right.
When we should be talking about the environment, right? We should be talking about global warming.
Right.
We should be talking about COVID,
Right.
the economy. Like which are the two top most important topics?
Exactly.
But there's a lot of topics that get swept under the rug because the topics that are important to the swing states are what gets brought to national attention, and that has fundamentally to do with the electoral college because those guys are being strategic about how they're going about campaigning for election.
Right.
And I just don't get it. I don't know why we haven't done away with this. I don't understand it. So getting to your point, Will, where people say, hey, my vote doesn't matter. It's kind of true in certain regards because if 48% of us vote Biden,
Right.
just for the sake of conversation,
Right.
and 51% vote Trump, all 48% votes don't matter. They don't matter. If you want to keep the electoral college, to me, it's a very simple solution. You just take the proportion of the percentage of the vote of that state, and then you allocate that percentage of electoral votes. So, if it was over 50, let's say it was 60%,
Right.
people who voted for Biden, and let's just say 40% voted for Trump in California, which we know is largely a blue state.
Right.
Then Trump should get 40% of the electoral college, and Biden should get 60% of the electoral college.
Right.
So that way, people's votes per state are equally represented, and you might be incentivizing people to then go vote because your vote does matter. Because we may not win this state, but we will get a percentage of it, and if
Right.
we can get enough of those percentages nationally, right?
Right.
We have an opportunity to win through a more traditional people's vote, right?
Right.
I mean, that's just my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, it goes for me. It goes a lot deeper. I mean, and the thing about Mike explained the electoral college really well. So if y'all didn't understand electoral college, Mike explained it very well. Now, one of the things that we have to put into consideration is the population of those places. So the demographics of those places that counts a lot because it's kind of like you find in a two-party system right now. You find that most minorities are Democrats, and then you have most people, non-minorities, are Republicans. So when you have a system like that, you'll find that where would you find most minorities? In all 50 states, you'll find them mostly in blue states, which is more California, Colorado, New York. Right. And those are places that are not central, which is they're more to the coast or the urban areas, right? And that comes down to one thing is for me, it goes back to equality. I mean, it's kind of like distribution of wealth.
Yeah.
So one of the things is that you realize that it's most people opportunities are not available for minorities in those central states, where you find most Republicans are. So you'll find that the concentration of minorities who vote on kind of balance things out, I would say, is in those blue states, those urban areas. Now, why that's so important is because, number one, is that if you look back centuries and go back, like not even centuries, but years ago, when you find that when blacks after slavery was granted rights to vote, or when you always had a system where the people who had the power controlled how voting or the laws that were put in place. Now, they're not going to put laws in there to not benefit themselves, right? So when you look at when women were given rights to vote, keep in mind, a black woman couldn't vote, right? Then you had when minorities were given rights to vote, you find that now they were in 1920. There's a history of where there was fear put in people to vote in 1920, where there was one of the worst massacres among black people who were, and I think I forgot a place, but if you research it in 1920, during the election this day, a huge amount of minorities were murdered, right? So because they were going to the polls, right?
Yes.
So there is that fear that's there. Now, one of the things that I think we really need to focus on is making sure that, number one, the laws that are passed, because at the end of the day, in our states, the laws that are passed benefit people equally.
Yes.
I always focus one thing is not on the president. I focus a lot on the props and the laws that individually impact people in my community.
Yeah.
Because
local.
Right, because local. Because at the end of the day, one of the things about it is that we've seen the power the president really has. You know what I'm saying? It's not much when it comes to the states. Because even with our current president, he was saying, okay, well, the states have more power.
Yeah.
They can do certain things. And it's kind of true, but at the same time, too, yes, he's the head of state. He was just passing on, taking away the responsibility.
But there's a lot of red tape that he has to go through to really move and shake.
Right.
Yeah, I feel you on
right.
that.
So for me, it's kind of like not focusing too much on the presidency. It's me focusing, because number one, I know our power is very limited. So it's kind of like for me, it's not I don't think my vote matters. My vote matters when it comes to local.
Yes.
And the props that affect me. Because
And how is local legislation conducted?
Right.
Without electoral college.
and that's true, but it still has to do with the population.
Hey, Mike,
Yeah.
are you reading some of the comments?
Yeah, so I saw that. So, Martin talking about we need to push Congress, the Senate, President to push for an amendment to get rid of the EC. I am 100% for that. Will, I want to definitely hear your thoughts on this. I'm just going to say two last things, and I would love to hear what you have to say on the matter. So a couple things, the 3/5 representation, right, was largely to do with the strategic push to sway black slaves to vote in the ideals of their white slave owners, right? So that's something that you have to consider. The other thing too is that the EC was founded because during that time there was no national distribution of information. So you didn't even know like who your national politicians were,
Right.
who your local, or you might know your locals, but you certainly may not know your regionals, and you certainly wouldn't know the nationals. So what they said, what all, the powers that be got together and said, look, why don't we elect a very select group who understands all of the information to be able to elect and represent proportionately each state, about on national issues. Now, this is before the evolution of technology, right? And we can argue all day about the disinformation that we all know exists, but the one thing we can't argue is that we now, through the power of those things in our hands, we have access to the entire world's information.
Right.
So consumers, regular Americans, are far more knowledgeable or far more educated about policy, about branches,
Exactly.
about we know what's going on, basically, right? So the reason why the EC was created, that problem, that challenge no longer exists. So why does the EC continue to exist? You know, and that's kind of like my last little 2 cents on
we
it.
still have a country that is, still set up in old rules that we don't feel a need to change until it doesn't go our way. The moment it doesn't go the way that someone powerful wants it to go in,
Yeah.
Right.
that's where you may see something like that change.
Right.
I remember the first time I voted in 2004 with Kerry versus Bush, and I voted for Kerry, and I looked at the I didn't even know what the Electoral College was.
Yeah.
I was like,
Right.
so I'm looking at, okay, you want this state, and then I said the Electoral College voted George Bush. I'm like, well, who are they?
Right.
Like,
Right.
Why they get a special choice to vote? So I agree with your sentiment there. One thing I did want to say about black people, and I want to talk about this too.
Yeah.
Because, we're black individuals in here, and how we view voting is maybe a little bit different than, most other people in this country. Because we've been here for a very long time, and there was a point in time where it took a lot for us to get an opportunity to vote.
Right.
And when we did get that opportunity to vote, then, poll stations were moved, people were, beaten and terrified, terrorized not to vote or to change their vote to whoever they want this person to be. So I think it's important that, although you may feel that your vote doesn't matter, just for what your ancestors went through, just for you to have the opportunity to vote, you need to do your due diligence and vote. You need to go out there and
vote.
Yes. Imagine going out there and doing all this work and being physically beaten or dying for the right for people to have access to voice their opinions so their opinions can shape this country, and no one not heeding to it just because you say my vote doesn't matter.
Right.
So I think it's important that you recognize what is done for you in the past and make the right decision to this day. So, what are you guys' thoughts of? It seems like we are in a country where it doesn't want people who are minorities to vote, specifically black people, because we have a higher percentage of incarcerated people, and the people who have been incarcerated or maybe have felonies can't vote after they got out of jail.
Yeah.
So what are you guys' thoughts about that? Should they have the right to vote, or should they not have the right to vote?
I mean, we're talking about paying a debt,
Right.
I mean, as a credit guy, you pay a debt, you're exonerated,
Right.
So if you commit crime and you now are forced to do the time for your crime, you come out, why are you still paying for a crime that is stated you've already served,
Right.
the sentence for that crime? So I don't, and I'll be honest with you, man. A lot of men and women in prison are super educated, because when you don't have anything but walls and time, you read.
And you think.
You read a lot and you think a lot. You have nothing but time to do it. You have no distractions. There's a reason why some of the greatest men in the Bible had to spend some time in prison. There's something weird about that place that just demands something different out of you. And I know that from experience. So I feel like a lot of these men and women who have been prosecuted and now are, out trying to make a new life for themselves, I believe that they should be afforded those rights. I mean, you guys know my story. I have a colorful criminal record, and I had to fight for my right to be able to vote and go through the process of like exonerations and, getting off probation and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so for me, it resonates very deeply when I see, especially the ones like the black men and women who, and people of color. I don't want to just make it just only black people, but the ones who are really trying to turn their lives around. It's one thing that. Oh, I love that, man, Marty. You coming with the fuego today? Isolation brings revelation. Come on, somebody.
Hands that pick cotton can now pick our public officials.
Woo, oh, my girl.
Marty Martin Jr.
Yeah, right. So I mean, like, it does strike a chord with me, man. And I love what you said, Will. Like, you're right, man. Like, I didn't want to vote this year. I didn't, but I felt it to be a civic duty to the men and women who have gone before me, who died for my right to be able to do that, So yeah, man, I show up to the polls and do what I got to do, or mail in my ballot, do what I got to do, and and honor that sacrifice that they had to make, because it was a sacrifice. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like when you seeing people hung from trees and all other kind of crazy stuff that we all
Right.
know about our nation's history, right? So yeah.
Yeah, well, for me, it comes down to criminal justice system. One of the things I had an interesting conversation just like maybe a month ago with the assistant district attorney in San Diego. Sat down across the table from her, and we were just talking. I'm not going to say names, but we were just talking, and I asked her about how does she feel about the criminal justice system, right? And they will admit that it is broken.
Yeah.
It is broken, and one of the things about it is that it goes back to the laws that were written in the past, and how to fix that. Because one of the things that I always see them revert to is always, oh, well, right now you're seeing there's less minorities in jail. Prisons are empty today, but one of the things I always point back to is, yes, we have to go back to the past, because there's people that are sitting in prison that fathers, uncles, a whole group of minority men that are in prison right now that has disrupted communities.
Yeah.
So how are we going to fix that? Because it's now affecting the present, right? And that's a highlight right now in minority communities. Now, one of the things that I always look at when I look at the prison system, I always say, just keep in mind this is a capitalist system.
Yeah.
And once we understand that prison is also part of that system, the criminal justice system is also part of that system.
Yeah.
And we look at things like, why do you find that most people who can afford an attorney, for the defense team, don't get a guilty or go to prison for long? We're seeing that right now with that lady who actually cheated for her kids to get into college.
Yeah, she got to select the jail
Right.
she's
Lori
going
Loughlin.
to. Yeah, I don't know her name.
Aunt Becky.
Right. We have that pedophile who actually had Barbados Island or whatever his name is.
Jeffrey Epstein.
Jeffrey Epstein.
Right.
We actually talked about those people, and I pointed out those people to her, and I was like, there is an imbalance. We have to recognize that first of all. There is an imbalance where you find that people who are low income, you find that's what the jails are filled with. So why we have to go back and now try to fix things in our community, right?
Yeah.
We have to look at that, the cause, because now it was kind of like everybody was like, oh well, we just gotta look at the end product of what's happening in those communities and try to fix that. That's why you find people who say, well, during Biden's time when he said that called minority men super predators.
Yeah.
You understand? People hold him to that,
Right.
But at the same time, too, you'll find that everybody who was a politician was saying that black men are prone to violence. They're prone to So one of the things is that we have to go back now and fix that.
Yeah.
We have before we start saying, okay, well, yeah. But I believe that, yes, people who are out of prison should get an opportunity to vote. It's the same freedoms as anybody, because at the end of the day, a lot of them went in there on a broken system.
Yeah.
And
It's interesting.
You can't put the blame on them.
It's interesting, fam, that you bring up Biden, because you're absolutely right? Some of the legislation that he advocated for, let's say 15, 20 years ago,
Right.
is propagated some of the problems that we have today. And
Right.
that is a God honest truth. But the thing that I also like about Biden is that from what I can see, obviously I don't know the man personally. I only know what he puts out in his, campaigning and such. He seems to have taken ownership for that. He has said that repeatedly, that by and large that mentality was a mistake,
Right.
And he's talked about, even in the debates, one of the points in the debate that really resonated with me was when he spoke to black voters about this concept of just carrying the weight of your skin. And if you are white, you are privileged. It's just that simple. Now, as a white privileged person, I'm not saying you're a terrible person for being privileged.
Right.
No, but it's foolish. It's fallacious to think that you're not privileged because you're white. And I was very surprised to hear him say that, and I was very happy to hear
Right.
him say that. Just simple ownership.
Right.
That for me is what a lot of what my vote was about. I've spoken with black people and white people who are advocating for Trump, and I hear a lot of the logic behind their decision, which is why I don't really argue with them per se, because I get where they're coming from. When you logically look at a lot of what his policies on the sides of the issues that he stands on, it is actually a pretty strong case to advocate for him. But I felt like I made my decision this year based on morality. The integrity of a man.
Let's talk about that.
You know,
and that's deep.
No, let's talk about that, because you're not here to bash our current.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
We're talking about a level of office where it comes with a certain moral compass, or at least appear to have a certain moral compass.
Yeah.
Right.
We look at past presidents, like the most recent President Obama. You can't really name too many mistakes he's made between the time he was a president as a man. Maybe some decisions he made as a president.
Yeah.
But as a man, you say, man, this is a quality
He's a good man.
Yeah.
Right.
You look at, I was going to say Clinton, but never mind.
I mean, no, but you know what? Dude, Clinton was a
even though
good
he-
man
even
too.
though
He just made some poor decisions.
But
Right.
he fessed up and owned up to it. Reagan, so Carter, Jimmy Carter. So, you want to look back at, and even Nixon
Yeah.
deciding to leave because he did something
Yeah, because of the gate.
that was against
Yeah.
the
Right.
office, as far as this is what we want our leader to be. So when we talk about Trump, and this was my main thing when I voted a few years back, when he was on that TV show talking about, I know this is a Christian radio show, so we're gonna leave your thoughts to the imagination, grabbing people
Yeah.
or
Right.
a certain sex of people.
Yeah.
Right.
I said, I don't know if I want my president saying this or doing this.
Right.
And on top of that, I don't know if I want a president who is not denouncing prejudice and racist organizations. With the whole Tiki Torch group. Yeah, there's some good people in Charlottesville too. Yeah, no one's saying that's all bad people.
Yeah,
But
absolutely
you're
not.
denouncing the ideology. You're not denouncing it. So when it comes to our current president, what are you guys' thoughts about his morality? Or maybe not our current president, but what you expect from a president.
Yeah, just
to
in
have
general.
In general, to be, what do you look for? What kind of man should he be? Or woman?
Yeah, because honestly, that's probably the thing that I am most excited for, is we are getting closer and closer to female leadership. I'm a feminist through and through. I advocate for the equality of all sexes, and I want women to be in positions of power and leadership, because I think that they bring something to the table that we as men, we just don't know, we just don't see. And I think that they need to be in greater and greater positions of leadership. I listen to a guy named Colin Cowherd a lot on sports radio, and one thing he says, and I really like the way he says it, he says, I want my quarterbacks to act quarterbackial, and I want my presidents to act presidential.
He must have been talking about Cam Newton.
Yeah, he talked about a lot of. He compares a lot. He has some really good points, and we won't go down that road today, right? But my thing is like, I would hope that my president has some sort of call to a higher authority, like some sort of accountability to a higher authority. Now, I would love for that higher authority to be Jesus Christ. But at the end of the day, I can't make a person believe in Jesus Christ.
So, Mike,
right?
we have Marty Martin.
Yeah,
Marty Martin.
We need dignity restored to the White House. Integrity is the key to public service. Prop 17.
Right.
So, man, we got a lot of good stuff going on, man.
Let me correct that. Pastor Marty.
Oh,
Pastor
is it Pat?
Martin Jr.
Okay.
Oh, we gotta change that Facebook name, right? I'm thinking Marty Martin Jr. is a pastor.
Pastor Marty Martin.
And quick shout out to Terrell, and quick shout out to Jackie.
Yeah, we miss you,
Jackie,
baby.
hey,
Miss
Jackie,
you.
what's going on?
Mimi,
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah. So yeah, but go ahead, Clint, because I feel like you can jump in and say some good stuff.
Not to cut you off. Man.
No, it's okay. We good.
So, because one of the things the recurrent theme I see is integrity, and I always ask people, what is integrity to them? And if you ask everybody has a different
Yeah.
That's
version
true.
of integrity.
That's true.
So for me, I try to overlook that, and because you're asking an individual, like, okay, well, because I believe Donald Trump, just like President Nixon, think that they had integrity.
Yeah.
Just like Bill Clinton think they had integrity. Now, for me, I look at the results, right? And the results of you and how you impact people, right? Is your integrity, enough to move people in a direction where it's now impacting people in a positive way.
Yes.
Right? For me, the first thing that got kind of rubbed me the wrong way with Donald Trump was when he first came down the escalator and he announced his presidency, where he started naming people as rapists.
Yeah.
And, trying to target different demographics. I believe, yes, speak the truth, but at the same time, you can't try to divide people.
Yeah.
You can say that, but at the same time, too, just like you would say that there's good people.
Yeah, it's devices. What leader brings people together.
Somebody who brings people together. And that's the results. How do you feel we're heading as under leader? Because a leader is supposed to be that example we follow.
Exactly.
Now, I talk to a lot of people, and a lot of people say, I ask people, would you allow President Trump to even teach your kids in class and say some of the things he says?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, that's a good one.
And I'm like, a lot of them, that's where they become quiet and to say, well, and I always put it to them like this, and I explain to them like this how I see it, like a teacher in class. I believe that President Trump is a great person and he is a great leader in a certain
type of context. Absolutely.
Type of context. I think he is. I mean, when it comes to business, yes, he is. Now, that's why I decided to give him a chance. Mm-hmm. Right now, I see a teacher as this. When a teacher comes in, they go through all these courses on child development, so that because one of the things I pointed out was that say there's unrest in the class, or a kid is misbehaving in the class. How are you going to control that if you have never, ever gone through those things, which is the courses, the ability to actually know why that child's reacting or discover why that child's reacting that way? Are you just going to say law and order in that child and expel them? Mm-hmm. Or are you going to try to discover what's happening with that child? It's the same thing as a leader in the nation. He was not really qualified. When it comes to business, yes, I think he's a great businessman. He can actually put things in place that will actually run a great business. But when it comes to civics and social, I think he's not the best person.
But when you become a president, that's one job that you learn on the job.
But I think, I'll disagree with that.
Yes,
but
no,
just keep in mind,
because you think about a lot of our
Right.
leaders, right? Ascended through politics.
Through politics, right.
And they've been in politics
Yeah.
for
Right.
a number. I mean, and we're not talking like a small number either.
they've been- yeah,
we're talking
exactly.
like decades, generations,
Right.
of like refining. One of the things I loved about Michelle when she did her autobiography or memoirs, whatever have you, becoming Michelle Obama. She talked about this a lot. Like when she entered into office at it was like year 1 and year 2. And that kind of emotion of wearing her heart on her sleeve, caused a lot of indictment, because there's a certain level of scrutiny that politics brings that you can't necessarily conduct yourself in a certain way.
Right.
And she had to learn that, and she adapted, and over time, she was able to kind of shift her narrative, which she really didn't have. She shouldn't have to do that, but that's just the nature of politics, right?
Right.
But with President Trump, I kind of lean toward what CJ is saying, where it's like, I just don't know what's gonna come out of your mouth, and that terrifies
pour
me.
Flames like
That-
fuel on the flames.
that
you know?
I have a buddy who does a podcast. He says, I can't trust you with the power,
Right.
and like that's something.
That's what some people like about him.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
And while that's ideal for certain situations,
Right.
and it certainly can work very well in business, right? Being
Right.
very shrewd and brash
Exactly.
and in your face. When you're listening or when you're having that kind of dialogue with a world leader who has
Right.
nuclear capabilities as much as you do,
Yeah.
Right.
I need you to be your temperament. I
Right.
need your temperament to be a little bit more poised.
Yeah. We need to see that unifying. You
Yeah.
can come and talk to us and unify us instead of saying, well, dividing us. And that's what I see a lot of, and that's what I feel. And that's just my opinion. I'm not saying that everybody sees that, but I just see a lot of divisiveness comes out when he speaks. So it's kind of like for me, like we just went through a pandemic, and then we had some social unrest due to racial inequalities and criminal justice, and it's hard. I would say it's like a 80-20 for when I hear him. 20% of the time he's talking when he's actually cautioned, or he says something and he has to rewind it. He says something that throws fuel in the flames, and then the next day comes back and rewinds it. But I believe that a leader should actually be able to know what to say during the time of unrest, just to bring calm to the situation. And that's what I haven't really seen, you know?
Here's another thing that I haven't seen. And this is always like and when I have had these dialogues with people about Trump, I just ask people really one simple question. Who do you think Trump is serving?
Read what Pastor Marty Marr said. It's good to call him Marty Marr.
Right? Yeah. As a politician,
he should be on the show.
Right? Who is he?
Yeah.
Who are you serving?
Right.
Who are you serving?
Right.
You know, our leaders are but trusted servants, right? That's the deal. You know, I say it all the time. I'm the CEO of Decade, and I tell people all the time, like, I am a steward of this operation that has been given to me by a higher authority, and it's my responsibility to steward it. And every employee that works with me does not work for me. We work together.
Right.
I ram it down my colleagues' throats.
Wisdom is something that's really important.
Right.
It's service.
Right.
Yeah.
Service. You are in the most powerful position on the planet.
That's true.
Right.
Literally. Like, this isn't even a hypothetical. Like, of the most powerful, most free country in the world. I need you to serve the public interest.
Right.
And not your own.
Right. And the thing about it for me, it would have been so nice. I mean, for me, it would have been like, okay, well, if he's not, because I believe any job, anybody can do any job. Like, it's set up right, you know, and you can learn a job. Right. But at the same time, I haven't seen that in him where for the past, I haven't seen him reach out to try to learn, you know, because at the same time, too, this is where during a time of a pandemic, where you would think that he would have reached out to his predecessors for help. It's
easier to bring people together through adversity. Right?
You know, so it's kind of like that's where I looked at and I was like, okay, well, you know, it's like, and then on top of that, one of the things that throws me off, and as I said, I try to give him a chance, just keep that in mind, is that he never ever takes responsibility.
Yeah.
And that's a problem I have with a leader. You know, a leader's supposed to be able to say, okay, well, this is my fault. Let's see how we can fix it.
Right.
You know, because that's something that we teach our kids how to do. Take responsibility. You'll get more help that way, you know, because but at the same time, too, everything is either not his fault or it's somebody else's fault.
Yeah, it's a lot of deflection, which is a classic. And see, that's all tactics, right? You know, those are tactics.
Right.
And as a strategic mind, I can appreciate your tactics. At the same time, from a morality and integrous issue, I need you to take some personal accountability. Hey, you know, it would be something as simple as simply saying, look, we underestimated the gravity of the COVID situation in the beginning. There was a lot of misinformation. I was unwilling to take the advice of my scientists and et cetera. Because of that, we may potentially have lost more lives than what was intended, but I promise America, we're gonna turn this around. You know, just and continue down the rhetoric that you're putting out. No different than Biden saying, "Hey, my philosophy about blacks being super predators, that was old, Jim Crow thinking. It was wrong. We need to change that. That is what I want to do as a president. I want to undo some of that things that I created in my history as a politician.
Right.
You know, like, these are things that, like, I appreciate, you know, because I'm a man. And Lord knows I'd have made 50 million mistakes, you know, and I continue to make them daily. Mm-hmm. And I need you as a leader to be willing to say, hey, I made some mistakes. I'm not perfect. And like you said, because we all get it, right?
Yeah.
It's the president of the United States. Like, you're right. That's one of the few jobs in the world that there's no amount of training that's going to prepare you for being in that position.
But you also said something really important. It's the most important job on this planet.
Exactly.
On this planet.
Right.
I mean, there's 9. Is there 9 planets in the solar system?
Yeah.
Pluto is kind of.
Pluto is a planet.
Pluto's a planet. Okay, I'm going with that. That's what they taught me in elementary.
Oh, that's good.
And
Who
so-
is he serving? That part, the devil himself.
Right?
But you know, this country, you hit it right on the head. It's the
Right.
greatest country on this.
Heck yeah, it
in
is.
this world.
Come on.
Right.
And whoever is deciding to lead this country holds a lot of power when it comes to relationships with other foreign countries. And you're right, we do want a leader that can nurture the right relationships and strategically mend broken relationships that we may have had in
Yeah.
the past.
Yeah.
If possible.
Yeah.
Someone that is quick to go to hire the right people that can help them make the right decisions.
Right.
But not someone who takes things personally
Right.
and makes decisions based on I just don't like this person.
It's
because-
crazy.
Like I heard him going
It's
at
cra- it's
LeBron
crazy.
James the
And
other
just
day.
just keep in mind, I just want to make sure that people don't think this is a Trump bashing session. You know, we're not bashing Trump. We just
GOD
pointing out-
Radio 1's not
right,
bashing Trump
right. We
either.
not.
Let's talk about it.
We just talking how we feel, and we talking the real. All right. So
We're talking about what we want from a president.
right, what we really
What we
want from a
want from a
president,
president,
and some of the things. I mean, I would say that yes, it's an 80-20 when we look at it, because at the end of the day, we look at where the nation is right now after 4 years.
Yeah.
Right? Today, right? Would we have expected this on the first day of 2016 of his presidency? And I would have to say a resounding, I wouldn't expect we'd be at this point.
Well, let me ask you
know?
guys this question because we got about 7 minutes left.
Yeah.
7 minutes left to vote. So if you're in the line, go do that now. When it comes to being black in this country, you know, you tend to have more people who are Democrat and vote Democrat.
Yeah.
What are you guys' thoughts about someone who may say, you know what, I'm not going to consider myself a Democrat. I'm going to vote for whoever I think is the best person. Do you think that's going against what's happened to the past for black people when it comes to voting in this country?
No, absolutely
Or do
not.
you think that it's the right? You think more black people should move towards getting out of the Democratic Party? and
No,
becoming
no,
Republicans?
no. I think black people should do what they believe is best.
There
Right.
you go.
Like, I think it's the stupidest thing in my life that we even have like these divisive, parties, all
Right.
this bipartisanship and everything that happens because it redistributes and misplaces loyalty for more moralistic thinking, like or what I like to call altruistic thinking, right? When I go to the polls and I love what you talked about earlier, CJ, about local, because
Yeah.
guys, remember, in 2 years from now, the voting that we do 2 years from now is probably more impactful to your day to day than the national elections.
Right.
That local it's paramount that
Right.
you go and vote. But if you've been a black man your entire life, obviously, and you through your right choices have accelerated your life and have done some amazing things, moved up economic classes if that's the case, and maybe just forever your views kind of lean more toward Republican now, just because you are living more of a Republican life, or your views line that way. If you believe that, then vote that. If you believe what a Democrat is saying about a policy that you agree with, vote that way.
Right.
Who cares? Just do what's right.
Right.
Do what's right.
For me, it's a little bit different. I mean, and I agree with what you say. I vote based upon, for me, I was like, this year, I was going to, just like everybody else, I was like, should I vote? Should I not? Is it going to matter? Or is it not? But then I had to look at, okay, well, I vote not for me right now, because voting is more for my future kids. Because that's basically
I remember
what,
hearing you say that before.
because that's basically what our ancestors who fought for us, for voting rights, did. Because they know their vote wasn't going to really make an impact right now, but the more we move closer to the goalposts, you understand? Because a lot of people always expect in 4 years everything just to magically change,
Right.
And that's not how the system is built.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to understand it's moving closer to the goalposts. voting every year, making sure that you vote on things that you know will impact not only you, but your future generation, your kids. Because at the end of the day, I don't want my kids growing up to have to go through all the turmoil,
Yeah.
that I had to go through, or experience racism in a extrinsic or intrinsic racism or bias. I don't want that, So for me, I vote along those lines. I want them to experience the same privileges everybody has. So for me, I always look at those things. I look at those things first. And for me, that's why I vote. It's not about what I can see now happening or the presidency or the national election. I vote based upon, okay, well, if my kids live here, I want to make it a better place.
I love that.
For them to live.
I love that.
Yeah.
So what you guys are saying. So we talked about some important things tonight.
I think we did.
So one of the most important things we talked about is get rid of the Electoral College because we have the technology now to not need it. What was the other thing? We want a president.
What our presidents look like, yeah.
Say it again.
What we want our presidents to look like.
We want our president to be someone who leads and doesn't take things personally, but leads in a way what's in the best interest of the country. Servant leadership. And then last but not least, we're talking about when it comes to being black or minority in this country, based upon your lifestyle, vote that way. Don't vote based upon your culture or your race because you're afraid that they'll go against you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not throwing my water.
Yeah.
But there was one other thing I think we talked about. It just slipped my mind on top of the
the most important thing.
What?
God is in control
There
of
you go.
everything.
Yeah.
And that we
You know it.
and for those of us who subscribe to a higher authority known as Jesus
Yes,
Christ, to not allow ourselves to get too high during the highs or too low during the lows, because we
Right.
know that we serve an almighty sovereign God who is in control of all things. And
There you go.
Yeah.
so
And last but not least, stay calm out there. It's just an election,
You know what? I'm so glad you said that
It's
because
just an election.
if it doesn't go your way, don't go rioting, burning cars, destroying small businesses or big businesses. You will wake up the next day and go about your business. And ultimately, I would say that, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. So if you want a successful life, don't look at it saying, if my president won, I would have been successful in life.
yeah,
Because this
Right.
president, I've seen that on bumper stickers. Because of this president, I'm here. No, that's not the case.
yeah,
You're there because of your own
Right.
personal choices. And if you're that passionate about something and you want to make a change, maybe you should go into politics yourself.
Come on.
Maybe you
Right.
should get more involved
Come
in
on.
your local community.
Yep, civic involvement.
Come on.
Yeah, get
Yep.
get
Come
involved
on.
yourself. So we have about a minute left. We're all going to wrap up and say one thing for a quick 20 seconds. But the one thing I do want to say is that keep God first. Pray for your leaders, because when you pray for your leaders, you pray that God has complete control and sovereignty over them and your life. Last 20 seconds, what you have to say.
Yeah, my same thing on your just to piggyback off. Yes, God is in control. If you read the Bible, God was always at the top first. There was no leader, king, anybody that God didn't use. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who is our leaders, who we think is going to change things for us. God is the one who's going to do all that. So I just want to impact people
Took
like.
his 20 seconds.
It's all
Yeah,
good.
sorry. Go ahead.
it's
Go
all
ahead.
good.
My
I'm not
20
worried
seconds.
about
Go
it.
ahead. Go ahead.
We've been talking all night. It's all good.
Go ahead.
What I want to tell you guys more than anything is I love you. God loves you. And never forget this. Never underestimate the power to manifest change in your own lives.
That's right.
Amen.
All right.
There we go.
Right.
You're listening to Let's Talk About It, special edition election night. We'll see you next week, same time, same place with the same folks. We miss you, Terrell. God bless and peace.
Peace.
Peace.